Jay, thank you very much for doing this, for agreeing to this video. And
Thank you.
you have a very interesting story that I came upon on Instagram. And you have a disease or a condition that is actually quite serious, and a growing number of people is afflicted by this condition, from what I understand. Um,
Yeah.
and you've made some dietary changes in your life which help you manage this condition. So yeah, let's talk about this. So why don't you tell us what type of disease you have, what the symptoms are, and so on.
Okay, so yeah, diabetes is a bit of a buzzword because it kind of incorporates a broad range of conditions at the moment that are going around. But type 1 diabetes, which I have, is classified as an autoimmune condition. So basically, your immune system has a malfunction, or um, it it doesn't it doesn't agree with your body properly in a sense, and it attacks your insulin creating cells inside your pancreas. So for people, if this is again a bit much for them, it means that my body is unable to produce the hormone insulin. Um, Insulin is an anabolic hormone specifically for storage of nutrients, particularly glucose. So whenever you ingest a meal that is anything in it really, but particularly with carbohydrates, that raises blood sugar, and then insulin is supposed to do its job and store that blood sugar away in a couple of sites where it's needed to be. But obviously, for someone with type 1 diabetes, we're unable to do that. So, without the use of exogenous insulin that we inject manually, we would never be able to regulate our own blood sugars.
Okay, so yeah, so insulin is a very important hormone. It sounds like this is what we need in order to produce energy, and to get energy, and also to get the nutrients in our cells. And so your body does not produce insulin at all. Is that what it is?
Yes, so I haven't done an insulin test for a very long time. I've had diabetes for about 16 years. So when they first test you in the UK, they can see how much insulin function you have left. But the more insulin you use over the subsequent years, your body just stops producing insulin. There's some people out there who still produce a little tiny bit, and I'd be interested. Or at the end of this conversation, we'll talk about after some of the dietary changes I've made to see if any of my numbers have changed. But yeah, as far as I know, I produce no insulin whatsoever.
So there are two different. Well, there's more than two, but there are two that are, I would say, the most common types of diabetes. That's type diabetes one and diabetes two.
Okay.
Diabetes two. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. That's people tends to develop this later in their lives, and but diabetes one is a much more serious condition. Correct?
Yes, so type 2 diabetes is, well, especially in the initial stages, is your body can produce insulin, but just the insulin can't do what it's supposed to do because of various other factors. Whereas, yeah, type 1 is like immediately life-threatening. If you were to take my insulin away from me, I wouldn't live for a very long time, to put it nicely.
Okay, this is interesting, and yeah, so I think yeah, people who may not be familiar with those conditions. So yeah, so you can actually without insulin, so without modern medicine, which makes insulin injections possible, you would not be able to live.
No,
This this
correct.
is this is pretty crazy.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so you've had it for 16 years. And how were you diagnosed? How did you find out that you have diabetes 1?
So like with by accident, kind of at home. This is a funny story. So my younger brother has type 1 diabetes. He's had it from the age of 7. Um, so basically, I was at home. My brother was testing his blood sugar before we have our evening meal, like we always do. We were staying at my grandmother's house, and she was like, "Hey Jay, why don't you test your blood sugar as well? We can all do it together as a family." So obviously she had suspicions, because I tested my blood sugar and it was off the chain. It was 23 on a millimole scale, which is like 414 on on the US deciliter scale, which is really high,
So
So,
what's the
and
normal
then,
range? What's the normal range in those kids?
so the normal range, you should be between 3.9 and about 6, So fasting blood sugar when you wake up is about 4.5. And then, you eat, you ingest some food, it'll go up to about 6, and then your body will regulate. So for someone to be 23, I almost had 4 times the amount of sugar in my blood that a normal person should have. And we'll get to the complications in that in a second. But what happened was we just was like, oh wow, straight to the hospital that same day. And then they didn't even keep me in. They ran a few tests. They gave me some insulin pens to leave with, and I've been taking insulin for 16 years now.
Hmm. So okay, so what even but even if you take insulin, even if you treat it the way conventional medicine tells you to go about it, there are complications that can happen later in life, correct?
Yeah, 100%. Um, and the problem is that I think glucose has got the most tightly controlled thing in the body. I mean, even more so than other hormones. Your body does a lot of things to keep glucose where it needs to be. So it's hard to describe, but it's like driving a manual versus an automatic, or even like a simulator. It's just trying to make every decision yourself. So um, when you're trying to do it yourself conventionally, and I'll get into what they tell you the advice for convention is in a second, um, it's constantly 24/7 doing maths, and you can't help but have bigger ups and downs than someone without diabetes. And the problems with having high blood sugar and low blood sugar, even if it's acutely or even chronically, is that it does damage the body in the long term. So if you do have prolonged high blood sugar, and over the course of someone's lifetime, this can only be like zero point 0.5, 0.1, 0.15 on average. But even just being out by this little bit is going to damage organs, eyes, tissues, arteries, right? Which, when you're young, when you're 20, you're 30, you're 40, you might not notice the effects, but later on in life, you'll start to feel the effects of this prolonged little chipping away. But on the flip side of that, and this is a lesson I only learned much later into my diabetes while talking to some people who are experts in the field, is when you go too low in blood sugar, this is like below like the 2 mark, which happens if you overshoot your insulin. You starve the brain of glucose. So you're getting like little tiny little bits of brain damage every time that happens. So when talking about it in this context, it sounds quite scary. Like you don't really think about, well, you do think about it every day, but you're not constantly thinking, oh wow, I gotta, brain damage, I gotta be careful, you gotta be careful. But when you actually talk about it, the effects are actually quite scary of what can go wrong if you don't manage your diabetes properly.
Mhm. Okay, so basically something that in a healthy person that is done automatically by the system, namely the management of the blood glucose, so that there is not too much and that there is no too little sugar in
Yes.
the blood. This is completely out of commission. This completely does not work in someone like you with a type 1 diabetes. So you basically have to constantly be aware of your blood sugar level and constantly measure it and constantly either eat or give yourself insulin or no, it's no. Hold on a second. In type 1 diabetes, it's not about eating, but it's about insulin because the sugar tends to be too high, right?
Yes. So unless you inject too much and then you have to eat to bring yourself back up, for
Ah, I
example.
see, I see. Okay. All right. And this too high blood glucose that type 1 diabetics tends to have, so this can actually is basically damage everything, like all the organs in our bodies. Yes?
Everything. It's really toxic to the body in high amounts. So the body really does not like high blood glucose.
Okay, got it. All right. So you were then given insulin injections and you were giving yourself insulin for 16 years and then you decided to do something else.
Yeah. So it's hard, right? Because I'm in the fitness industry. My main job is I'm a trainer educator and I also train personal training clients. So I'm always researching, health and fitness literature, for example. So yeah, basically, I've always tried to be as healthy as possible. So I'm always looking for the best, not like I wouldn't say the best diet in commas. I would just say the best way to live optimally. Um, And last year, even though that I was, been following like a paleo diet for a very long time, I got really sick last year. I went to the doctor and I was having some sort of abdominal pain all the time. And she diagnosed me with an intestinal infection. She was like, "Oh, well, you have bacterial overgrowth and intestinal infection." And this is probably due to a couple of reasons. One is the overconsumption of fruits, vegetables, and particularly fiber. Um, Anything with high FODMAPs. So what happens is in a human being is anything that doesn't get absorbed in the small intestine, um, anything that we call roughage or fiber, anything that we can't absorb, travels down to the large intestine and then ferments. And as someone who's in the health and fitness industry, and I was in my 20s, I always thought, more is better. So instead of just having like two bits of broccoli, I'll eat a whole broccoli or a whole cauliflower. So, or I'll eat 10 pieces of fruit and veg a day. I'm trying to do better. It's my A-type mentality. So then I started to get really, really sick. And they put me on a whole bunch of antibiotics and low FODMAP dieting. And no matter what I did, I was still bloating, I was still pale, I was still lethargic all the time. Um, and then someone came to me and they recommended the benefits of a carnivore diet. They were like, "Oh, this seems to be doing really well." Someone I know has rheumatoid arthritis, and they've been suppressing their rheumatoid arthritis with the carnivore diet. So I picked up this book called The Hypercarnivore Diet. I forget the guy's name, Don. I wrote it down here somewhere. I'll send you the link. But Don Matz, anyway, it's about 400-500 page book, and it really goes into everything on a meat-based diet, right? It even measures the size of our organs compared to other carnivorous animals and the pH in our stomach. So anyway, I read this book cover to cover. I couldn't put it down. I think I read like 400 pages in 2 days. And just as I closed the book and I put it down, Sean Baker popped up on my social media going, "Hey, World Carnivore Month, everyone get involved." So I was like, done, I'm in. So I worked out that I needed 4 steaks a day roughly to get my energy needs for 31 days. So I was like, right, I put it on social media, Instagram stories. I'm going to eat 124 steaks in a row, nothing else. That's all I'm going to eat. And I put it on my stories, number one, number two, the same cut of meat for 30 days. And I didn't know what I was going to do after that because, I'd always been someone trying to be super healthy. And, I always believed that fruits and vegetables are the way to go. But I tell you what, after those 30 days, I'll get into some of the specifics, but the main thing that I realized was just energy, mental function, and I could breathe again. For so many years, I couldn't breathe through my nose. I never knew why. I thought it was because I was living in a congested city. But the moment I dropped all of those fermentable fruits and vegetables, actually all plant foods altogether, I could actually breathe through my nose and I was sleeping much deeper. My brain had mental clarity. I mean, it was like, I hate to say things was like one of the best things I ever did, but it was probably one of the best things that I ever did besides managing blood sugar just for my health. Um, to keep going and going on, I didn't tell my doctor I was going to do the carnivore diet um, to answer one of the later questions because I just wanted to do it. And I went back 4 months later, in April, to do my full stool test. Everything's cleared up, everything's gone, everything's perfectly fine. 4 months of carnivore diet, and I'd reversed for what she told me 12 months ago, and she was like, "Oh, you're heading for intestinal cancer if we don't clean up your intestines." So it was like a miraculous overhaul. And then for the diabetes thing, my blood sugar's never been better, and I've never taken less exogenous insulin in my life, which is so it means that you just less to worry about. It doesn't go up so high at all. It doesn't go down so low. It's just like playing easy on a video game compared to playing like very hard. It's incredible the difference.
Mhm. Wow, amazing. So hold on a second. So you were during those 30 days you were eating 4 steaks a day, but but did you commit to those 4 steaks no matter whether you were really that hungry or not, or were you that hungry every day that you ate 4 steaks?
Yeah, I was hungry because I did a load of blood tests last year, and I'm just putting two and two together. But even though I was on all those fruit and vegetables, I had about 12 or 14 nutrient deficiencies. So I think that I ate and I just felt incredible. Actually, I lost weight, like so it wasn't the fact that I was hungry and I was overeating. I really enjoyed eating that amount of food, but it wasn't like I was eating 5,000 calories. I probably, if I punched it back, it would average about 2008, which for someone who was 90 kilos at the time wasn't too bad. But I'm sitting today at about 81 kilos, 82 kilos. So the carnivore diet has even like we all know it's like so satiating. You're actually getting your nutrients in, you're getting everything else in. That some days I cut it down to three steaks if I wasn't that hungry, to be honest with you, over those 31 days. But then again, some days I would eat five if I was training super hard. So I wasn't meticulous, but I just told myself that I was going to do 124 in a row, no matter what, and see this month out.
So do you still have those 12 yeah, those deficiencies?
I don't imagine that I do. I haven't been back for a retest since because I paid for all these tests off my own bat, right? So they weren't a. So what I wanted to do is I want to wait until the end of this year that I've done a 12-month strict carnivore, and then I'm going to get all of my lab tests done and then compare them to the year before, just because I know that even 8 months, 9 months in now, there's still some work to do with regards to like gut healing, for example. So no, I mean I've done most of the hard work, but for me, for being optimal, I wanted to give it like 12 months and then be like, hey, this is my results of the carnivore diet after 12 months.
Mm, right.
I'm yet to get all my tests done yet.
So what I find really interesting is that although you had been paleo for a long time before that, as you said, you still developed those nutrients deficiencies, number one. And the other
Yeah.
astounding thing is that actually a doctor told you that eating fruit and vegetables caused a problem, which I think one would be hard pressed to find a doctor who would actually admit that.
Yeah. Well, I think it was. Well, I went to see someone privately. It wasn't. So someone, and they were, and basically, it wasn't so much that they were trying. They didn't, come out and say, "Hey, fruit and vegetables is not what you should be doing." They were just like saying, "So this collection of fruit and vegetables that are high in fiber and high fermentable, you need to cut out." You know, and they were like, "You can do these ones, which are low FODMAP, which your typical carrots, white rice, or whatever." But even on taking out all of the fermentable ones, I still didn't feel great until I went fully carnivore.
Right. Okay. So they just told you not that that eating vegetables was bad, that only that you were eating the wrong type of vegetables.
Yeah, essentially, They didn't put it on record, the fruit and vegetables. I think that I only know two or three doctors that would give me that.
Right. Okay, so you start eating carnivore and you have been eating this now for 8 or 9 months.
Yes.
Your blood sugar normalizes, you experience mental clarity, your nose congestion clears up, and you lose weight, you feel great. Yes? And
Yes.
so, did you talk to your doctor about this? That, hey, I'm only eating meat, and if so, how did he or she react?
Yeah, we discussed it, but I know from their social media that they're always pushing, not pushing, pushing is the wrong word. They're using a lot of like juices, vegetables, cleanses, and all these sorts of things. So we had a discussion. Yes, I'm glad it worked for you. I'm super happy. It probably worked because of A, B, and C reason, but you're going to want to be careful of having these long-term nutrient deficiencies being on a carnivorous diet. So while there's a mutual respect for the results that were achieved, there was also the underlying, yeah, but are you really going to do this forever? So when I go back after 12 months in January and get all my tests done and with all the micronutrients and my cholesterol and my lipids and my pancreatic function tests, then there's no argument. Then I've always just been on the premise of just let your results do the talking. Like I was always telling people for the last 8 or 9 months, oh yeah, yeah, I feel great. This is the best thing I ever did. And then the moment I put up a picture on social media of, hey, look, I'm diabetes and this is what happened to me being on diabetic, then the whole world wants to listen, So, which is brilliant because you need to prove yourself. So I will wait until I get my full results, and then the results will speak for themselves, So well, I have had the discussion.
But
Go
are you
ahead.
still measuring your blood glucose regularly?
Yes, I have an implant. No, I have a continuous glucose monitor that is attached to my leg. Um, so basically, to my phone, it just sends me my glucose continuously 24/7. And yeah, I've never done less insulin in my life. And to put it in perspective, when I was using the standard approach, even on a paleo diet, I was doing in the university. When I was in university, I was doing like 70 units a day. And even last year, when I was healthy, I was doing 50 units of exogenous insulin a day. And today, I'm down to 11 um, units total for about 2,700 calories. So, and I think it's only getting better. So I know there's some people out there who are down to like 1 or 2 units of insulin a day, which is incredible. So I'm really excited to see where I can take this, where how little insulin I can live on a perfectly normal life, because that's the goal for diabetes is to use. I know most people, when the doctors tell you, when I first got diagnosed, they always frame it as you can do whatever everyone else can do. You can have a normal life. You can eat whatever anyone else can eat. And I think while it might be comforting to some people, it's the wrong education. You should be telling people, no, it's going to be hard work and you're going to have to make some drastic changes, but you can live a normal and healthy life and do everything that everyone else does and not frame it into you can eat what everyone else can eat, right? So I think there's a gap where the education should be for people because, um, like funny story. I had an operation, just on a side tangent. I had an operation because I dropped a dumbbell on my toe. So I had to have a metal rod put through my foot. So I woke up after surgery as in hospital and they brought me around a diabetes meal. And they brought me around a meal of um, rice, crackers, and bread. Just that, straight up rice, crackers, and bread. And they were like, this is a diabetic meal, you can eat it. And I was just like, no, I mean, I'm lying in a bed. I've got zero activity whatsoever, and all you're going to feed me here is 300 grams or 200 grams of carbohydrate. There is no way I'm going to eat that. I'm sorry. And the nurse was getting angry at me. No, you have to eat this. This is a diabetic meal. And I was like, respectfully disagree with you, but I'm gonna fast. Oh, but you have to eat. You just come out of surgery, and I was like, so there's a massive gap with the education of the world about, for people who are sedentary anyway, you shouldn't be giving them that much fuel. It's just, and especially sitting in a bed, like anyway, not to get off on a rant on like public service people. She's probably just doing her job, but there is a massive gap with what people should be eating on diabetes. It should not be low fat. If anything, it should be high fat. It should be very low carb, if any carbs at all.
Right. Now, I think this is actually a very important point, and this is something that just completely like blows my mind and enrages me, like the complete disconnect between science or even common sense and what is actually practiced in medicine. I mean, this is absolutely crazy. I mean, diabetes. I mean, for how long have we known about this, and
Yeah,
for how long do people know the problems associated with it? And but now you're talking with a professional because okay, it wasn't the nurse because the nurse just did what the doctor ordered, right?
yeah, yeah, 100%.
So I mean, how can a doctor not know what diabetes one what that means and what that involves, right? So like not only I mean this is like criminal in my opinion. I'm like they were straight endangering your life. That's how I put it. That's how I see
It,
it because I mean giving you so much carbohydrates to eat. I mean it's clear that your blood glucose would shoot up immediately afterwards, right? So it's just like
yeah,
I
it,
can't.
it baffles me. You know, I'd have to take a whole bunch of insulin, which would be slow to work because I haven't done 5 steps that day because I've got a metal rod through my foot. And then as soon as at some point in the next 3, 4 hours it comes crashing down, I'll be hitting the emergency button for someone to bring me some more carbohydrates, and then the cycle's going to repeat over and over again, you know. And it's just people need to get off that blood sugar roller coaster.
Yeah. So, okay, so what are you eating now? Are you still eating only steaks, or do you also eat dairy? Do you eat organ meats? Like, walk us through it, what you eat, how much, and how often.
So I brought my meal eating frequency right down. At the moment, I'm just trying to do, just because something in particular I'm working at the moment, just base my meal around two big meals a day. So for breakfast this morning, I had eggs, bone marrow. I really like to go to the butchers and they dice along a shin of a cow for me. I just bake them for 15 minutes a couple of days before, and then if you take them out of the fridge the next day, it's really waxy, really creamy. It's really like I'm addicted to that sort of stuff. So this morning was bone marrow and some eggs, and then for my meal two today was about 500 grams of ribeye steak and then some bone broth. So nothing too fancy today. I do take a lot of electrolyte water in the morning and in the evening, which is just a homemade mix of potassium, magnesium, and salt. And then I try to get in liver about twice a week. I just, for me, some people can smash it. I'm still developing the taste to be able to eat it straight. So I've been grinding it with bacon, some decent bacon and some minced beef, and frying it into burgers. So I'll make those burgers about twice a week. So I will get like a mega dose of about 500 grams of liver twice a week, maybe 250 to 500 grams, depending on how many burgers I'm making. And yeah, just slowly learning more about the nose to tail approach. When I was away in Singapore working a couple of months ago, um, my colleague was also doing a carnivorous approach when I was there, and we made up some pig skins, which were great. So I'm just trying to incorporate as much nose to tail eating as I can that's easy and fits my lifestyle. But the main things that I'm eating at the moment outside of muscle meat would be a load of eggs, liver, bone marrow, and bone broth. No, I haven't tried. So a couple of years ago, it was upsetting my stomach. I was eating dairy. Obviously, I had some sort of bacterial infection, so it's probably why I was upsetting my stomach a couple of years ago. So I read the question and I was like, oh yeah, maybe I should try some dairy. So I missed it. I love dairy. So but I haven't put it in since I've been strict carnivore. More so because I'm just it used to affect me, but I think I'm in a much better place now, so I'll have a try. But as of now, no, I haven't got any dairy in my diet.
No, I I started eating dairy after I think 8 or 9 years of not having any, and I got totally addicted to it. And
Oh, okay.
and this is actually something that you can hear about in the carnivore community, and some people warn about this, that yeah, dairy will make you addicted. And I can totally confirm this. I mean, I was just stuffing my face with cream, you know? I wouldn't even whip it, I would just like chug it, just drink it like this. It was like out of control, I'm telling you. And the interesting thing is that, so I haven't had dairy, as I said, like for 8 or 9 years, and then I started eating it again. And in those 8 or 9 years, my psoriasis patches were completely gone. I never had one psoriasis patch, not one psoriasis outbreaks. And after I started eating dairy, the psoriasis came back.
Oh, okay.
And then
Yeah.
I cut out the dairy again, and after 2 or 3 weeks, the psoriasis went away again.
Okay. Yeah, that's good information. I know there's mixed reports on it. I know some people are like, yeah, yeah, I love it, but uh, I know that a lot of people it does cause skin outbreaks and some gut issues. So I haven't been in a massive hurry to bring it back into my diet, to be honest. With
And so, how much do you eat per day in kilograms or pounds?
So about a kilo of meat, I would say. But sometimes, I'll swap in eggs or some other stuff. Basically, I don't like I count I don't track my calories with the idea of only eating to a certain limit. I track them backwards just so I've got an idea of how much food that I'm consuming because I like to keep a lot of data on blood sugar, et cetera, et cetera. So I think on average I'm eating about 2,800 calories is like a decent maintenance diet for me. If I'm cutting a little less, if I'm trying to put on some weight a little bit more. So yeah, but for the bulk part of my carnivore journey, it was about 750 grams of ribeye steak and then about 8 to 12 eggs
8 to 12 eggs every
a
day, are
day.
you saying?
Yeah, when I want to trade them in, like I love eggs, man. Like I just addicted to them. I no problem. Someone's like, you can only eat eggs today. You here's 24 eggs a day and two stalks of bone marrow. That's fine with me. I'm all good.
Okay. What fat do you use?
Primarily just duck fat or goose fat, which I can eat out of the jar. So I get pretty accessible here. Actually, I leave it in the fridge, so I just scoop it into my cast iron skillet there when I'm frying my steaks up, or and then I'm always just finding myself cooking and then eating a little bit out of the jar. So those are my only two fat sources.
What about pork? Do you eat pork?
Yes, yeah, I love pork when it comes around. Maybe because I'm on the go all the time or being a bit lazy, I don't eat it so much because it takes a little bit longer to cook, a lot longer to prep. So, like for a steak, you can be done in like 2 minutes and you can be eating. But actually, to be honest with you, I've just been rotating a lot of lamb and beef. But I don't know why actually, I don't. The quality of pork you get in Hong Kong isn't amazing. There's a bit of swine flu in China. So, and a lot of that pork creeps down. So I'd have to import it in from Australia, which is okay. But the access that I have to beef and lamb is much more decent here.
What do you think about eating meat raw, especially beef? Do you do this? Have you tried it?
No, I've eaten stuff super rare. I haven't eaten anything raw, but I know there's a big thing in Instagram at the moment going around for frozen liver, and I've just frozen some liver, so I'm gonna have a crack at just breaking it off and eating it. So if I was much closer to the source of the food, like we don't grow anything or make anything here in Hong Kong, I'd be much more likely to have a go. Like I was just looking at someone's Instagram this morning, and they were eating raw bone marrow while cutting up a cow or whatever they were doing. I was like, wow, great, that looks amazing. I'm gonna come and visit you. But after something's been frozen, flown on a plane, defrosted, I haven't been brave enough to try anything raw just yet. But I would like to have a go.
What about ketoacidosis? Are you afraid to go into ketoacidosis? Have you ever had an event where you got too acidic, or how do you manage this?
So I measure my ketones in the morning. Depending on training and what I've been doing, they usually sit between about the 1 mark, sometimes zero point 0.5 up to 1.5 for ketones measure. When I was cutting recently or trying to lose body fat and I was doing a couple of 48-hour fasts, they started, they got 2.1, 2.8, 3.5. And then I was like, oh, hang on. Anytime that they get over 3, I just have a big protein refeed, and then the next day I've been knocked out. I've knocked down a big peg or two on my ketones. So typically in a day I'll eat about 180 grams of protein, and this is one of the reasons why I track. So if I was to my keto numbers were to start creeping up over 3, I'll just do a day where I eat like 250 to 270 grams of protein, and my keto numbers will drop straight back down. So no, I've never been worried about going to ketoacidosis. I do pay more of attention to it when I'm doing prolonged fasting, like up to about 48 hours, but I've never been over 3 for more than a day because I just have a big protein refeed afterwards.
But still, three. This is still pretty low, because like from the readings that Michaela Peterson posts on her Instagram, she regularly goes into like 4 to 5 point something, and
Yeah,
I
yeah, super.
right, and I believe ketoacidosis starts. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like from 15 and onwards. Correct?
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. But I think they tell I need to look into a little bit more detail. But they say for diabetics you want to stay clear anything above 7 or 8. So not that I would love to get into deep ketosis a little bit more, but sometimes I'm like, oh, hold your horses. What's the risk reward benefit here? And for someone like me who does a lot of resistance training about 4 days a week, I like to eat a lot of protein in my diet anyway. So I've been solid. I will try an experiments of trying to sit at 2 and 3 for longer, but at the moment, I feel good. I feel great. Everything's going well. So I haven't tried anything too fancy for the moment.
Mhm. Okay, so I have two more questions. So one question is, so yeah, let's talk about fasting because this is also something that is spreading among the carnivore
Yeah, yeah.
community right now. So what benefits have you seen and how long did you go with the fasting? What was the maximum time that you fasted?
So I've done just a few 48 hours. I haven't done any longer than that. I would like to do them longer, but the benefit for me is that when I first did it a few months ago, I did my first day with no insulin whatsoever. Like I woke up, um, spent my whole day, woke up the next day, and my blood sugar was 4.7, bang on the money, and I hadn't done a single unit of insulin at all. And I was like, wow, this is perfect evidence for anyone who wants to say that insulin and food is completely, like, we know, but it should be told you to more, is completely in relation to each other. And if you can mimic fasting, or if your diet is set up in a way that is, fasting friendly, then you really are going to mitigate how much insulin you need to do, and everything. So um, I I would like to do a bit longer fasting, but I talked to a couple of guys in the industry. There's a really good guy in Sweden that I run a lot of my fasting protocols behind. Um, and because I'm quite lean, he was just saying there is a risk of losing lean body mass when you're too lean if you're doing extended fasting. So for you, he was like, you can do some 48 hours, or if you have a really, really high calorie few 4 days, you can do 72 hours if you want. Um, but again, the benefits for fasting, for me as a diabetic in particular, were teaching yourself that you don't have to eat, you don't have to be addicted to eating at certain times, because for the first, let's say, 14, 15 years of my diabetic journey, it was like, you have to eat at these times, you have to inject at these times. If you don't, everything's going to go to a mess and your whole life's going to be over. And then, so you get into this routine of going, right, I'm going to eat every 3 hours to maintain stable blood sugar. And then you start this fasting protocol and you go, oh, wow, without eating every 3 or 4 hours, I've got so much more time. I'm not constantly looking at my clock when my next meal is going to be, and I don't have to eat. When you're on a carb-based diet, you get up and down and you run out of energy all the time. But that was the main thing for me, was clearing up my headspace and realizing to myself that you don't have to eat, and if you go a day without eating, it's not going to be the end of the world. Um, and yeah, outside of that, I don't know, nothing that really the carnivore diet didn't already do for me. I'm sure someone coming into fasting would tell them that their digestion's better and their nasal has got better and everything, but I'd already experienced so much benefit from the carnivore diet that adding the fasting to me was just was great practice in discipline, and I'm bumping up my ketones a little bit, but I didn't, for me yet, maybe it's because I haven't dived into 72 hours or longer, I haven't really seen anything magical on top of the carnivore diet.
Okay, all right. Okay, my last question is, so right now in the West, like in Europe and in America, it seems that there is this vegan virus going on. That's, this push towards veganism, or at least vegetarianism, or a reduction of meat consumption, and so they're promising us that this will save the planet, that it will save us from the climate catastrophe
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
upon
Like
us.
it's such
And
an emotive topic for me. I try and like, I just raft off into, yeah. So for the record, I'm sorry that my dad is a vegan. We argue all the time. I think we fell out recently because go finish your question. Go on. Sorry.
right, so yeah, so there's this basically mental virus going on, and and it seems to be supported even by government agencies and the World Health Organization, like all those institutions. So it's really caught on, like, at the top levels of governments and
Yeah.
authorities and so on. And but I heard that in Asia the situation is quite different, and Dr. Sean Baker, he actually likes to post those statistics that show that among the populations with the highest meat consumption, there's people who live in Hong Kong and in
Yes.
other Asian countries. And okay, another fact is some vegans and vegetarians in Europe and America like to quote an alleged fact that people in Japan, that they mostly eat rice and vegetables and just few bits and pieces of meat or fish. And then one guy, he actually traveled to Japan and he interviewed a number of Japanese people and asked him, what do you think about the idea that meat is unhealthy? And they looked at him as if he was an extraterrestrial. And so he asked a number of people, and he said that veganism or vegetarianism in Japan is as good as non-existent. There are like as good as no vegan or vegetarian restaurants. That people literally gorge on fatty fish and meat. He says meat and fish like comes with every meal essentially, and that there's a completely false picture that people in the West have about what people in Japan eat. And so I wanted to ask you, okay, so this vegan viral mental disease that is taking over the West, is this catching on also in Hong Kong, or don't see any of this over there?
It's only the only people that is catching on with is the Western people, even if they're based in Hong Kong. The only one there was only ever two vegan restaurants in Hong Kong. One of them closed down, and one of them is still going. But they're like vegetarian. It's like no, Hong Kong meat especially is there's meat in every fast food. Like it is every traditional Chinese place or wherever is centered on hanging ducks, hanging chicken, pork belly. I mean, I can go into, don't get me wrong, there's some of them are covered in soy sauce and MSG and some of these sort of sauces, but primarily you walk along the street and even walking to work in the morning, I pass all of these Chinese restaurants that there's just loads and loads and loads of meat hanging up in the window. And the one thing they do differently is the one thing the why, yeah, Hong Kong has got the highest meat um, eaten per person per capita in the world, and also the longest life expectancy. The one thing about Hong Kong people that I will say is that they don't eat huge amounts of food. As part of the culture. My fiance is local Hong Kong Chinese, and they eat small meals, right? But in all of these small meals, there are fatty meat. Like they don't sell chicken breast in KFC in Hong Kong because no one wants them. They only sell chicken legs and chicken wings and chicken thighs, right? Like breast meat, like lean protein is a Western thing, It's like lean protein. Don't get me wrong, they still do eat, they put vegetables as part of their meals. It's not like they're a carnivorous city at all. But everything is set, there's very lots amounts of meat, and all of the meat that they do eat is incredibly fatty. And the same thing when you go to Japan, I don't know how people can think that, the most popular food to come out of Japan is sushi and sashimi. And I don't know how Westerners suddenly just miss that and go, yeah, they just live on rice. No, it's not true. I'm sorry. So yeah, it is annoying, but you just got to put it into perspective that Hong Kong has got the highest life expectancy and the highest meat consumption, and then for all its faults, and I know there's a lot of other things to do with it, but India with the lowest meat eaten per person has got the lowest life expectancy. And there's almost a difference of about 20 years between person to person, and that just speaks for itself.
Right, and not only do they have one of the highest life expectancies, but also the IQ is one of the highest. Like many of Asian countries, like Hong Kong, Singapore, and some other places over there, they regularly are on at the highest, at the statistics, the populations with the highest IQs.
Okay,
So,
that's new to me.
yeah, so knowing what we know now about how meat and saturated fat, how important it is for mental health, it just makes sense, right?
Yeah, perfect. Makes perfect sense. We can look back and I, I s- I just wish everyone could feel like I've tried to do, like, I'm sorry, I've tried to do when I was in my younger days, influence probably from family members, trying to go as plant-based as possible, and I got really, really sick. There's no doubt about it. I really had a bad time with my joints, my digestive system, my whole body and wellness in general. Now I've done carnivore. I just wish I could get everyone just to do the 30-day carnivore, just to see how you feel. Don't like my advice to people is what's going to happen to you in 30 days? Nothing. For me, I had 15, 14 nutrient deficiencies. So even if someone says, oh, what about vitamin C on the carnivore diet, which we know is not true, but it's what they love to go for. It's like, well, one nutrient deficiency potentially 10 years from now doesn't make up for the 15 that I already have in black and white on paper. So yeah, I wish people would just try it, just see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, I hope that it will continue like this in Asia, that they will stay clear of this vegan. I call it a mental illness, really. That's
Yeah,
it's.
I hope so.
But and the reason I see for this that this caught on in the West so much is because people here are so much influenced by experts and highly educated professors, who tell us what to eat and they know everything better. Now, the prime example is Professor Walter Willett from Harvard University, who has been teaching people, I don't know for how many decades, to decrease saturated fat consumption, to increase intake of good whole grain carbohydrates,
Yeah.
and those are people who, if you just have a Harvard degree and you have a couple of publications to your names, then you knock at a couple of doors at the government, they will open up like magic, right? And so people use this academic clout that they have to exert influence over entire populations, and they issue guidelines which are not backed by any evidence, by any solid interventional studies, and they just wreak havoc, and just because they have a Harvard degree or some other prestigious
And it's hurting people. It should be it should be illegal. They should have to answer when we get the answers, and we will get the answers. They should have to answer for what they've done.
Yeah,
It is bad.
absolutely. Yeah. So, Jay, thank you very much. It's a great and very
Thank you.
inspiring story. So, yeah, I wish you much continued success, and thank you again.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.